Hello everyone, my name is Brian Luna, and here we have Andrew Rubin and Max Valencia, and today we're going to teach you a thing or two about sustainable agriculture. So, first of all, raise your hand if you know what sustainable agriculture is. So not a lot. So first we're going to begin with what is something sustainable. Well, a sustainable practice is a practice which can be continued indefinitely without the risk of depletion of resources. But here we're going to focus about sustainable agriculture. So, sustainable agriculture has three main criteria. Here, this quote by John Eichred from the University of Missouri, who's a professor there, tells us some of those. Some of them being the economic costs, the effects on the environment, and the effects on people. So, here you can see a lot more of the important criteria that we need to focus on, and most of them we want to reduce and at the same time be very efficient and increase the yield of crops. So, what is the main issue we're facing here? So, here we're facing one big issue and one issue that waterfalls into it. So, the main issue we have is that we don't know a sustainable agricultural practice. And why do we need a sustainable agricultural practice? Well, that's because the population has been growing exponentially lately. For example, in about 1950, the malnutrition rate across the globe was about 20%, and now it's been increased to up to 66%, which is more than 3 times what it was before. So we can see that this issue is very important to fix, and here we plan on fixing it.
So our first solution to the fact that there's a growing population and we need to produce enough food for everyone is the Evergreen Revolution. The Evergreen Revolution was created by Dr. Swaminathan, who is an Indian geneticist and is very revered as a great scientist. He's created this Evergreen Revolution to provide mass amounts of crop yield to produce enough food for people to be sustained. And this solution has been used in India for the past 50 years, and it has shown great success producing great amounts of rice and wheat, which are the main crops used here. The pros and cons of this solution is the fact that there's great amounts of crop yields when you consider the fact that there's not much resources or land being used. In terms of comparing it to many different agricultural methods, this uses a lot smaller amounts of resources, which is one of the greatest pros, and also produces many of the same results as other large farms that have large amounts of fields and resource use. But I think that the greatest con with this comes a very big lack of diversity in the crops that can be grown with this solution. With this solution, what you have to mainly focus on is the efficiency of growing a lot of crops to produce enough food that can be either sold or eaten by the country that's growing them. So it really focuses on only growing wheat, rice, which are very easy to grow in mass quantities. So this would just not allow us to grow many other crops like that we can make many more delicious meals, but we can sacrifice that for growing it for more efficiency and more produce. The implications and limitations of this is that this is going to create a very productive agricultural system. The fact that this is producing a lot of crops with less resources is just going to make it very efficient, and it's just going to improve on many factors of sustainable agriculture that we're trying to deal with. But also the fact that this can be economically, this solution is very well suited because we're producing enough crops from smaller amounts of resources. The fact we're not wasting too much money on all the resources that would be needed, like fertilizer, due to the fact that this solution uses the environment and all the different resources that you need to grow in large quantities. We're going to be basically saving much more money and being able to sell it for a lot greater profit. And the limitations again is that we aren't able to grow the biggest diversity of crops, but also another great limitation is that the climate that's growing. The fact that this has been only shown to be proven in India, which is it's a warmer climate, and it's going to do well suited for rice and wheat, which are two water-bearing crops. But those crops are specific and very well suited for that. So implementing it into different environments, we're not too sure about how it would fare in colder or different environments than it would be in India.
And this brings us to our second solution, precision agriculture. And this was developed by a group of Midwestern soybean and corn farmers in the 1980s. And what it does is it gathers data and implements them into like a data system that farmers use to make more accurate and precise choices on any of their farming needs, given the name precision agriculture. The United States Department of Agriculture defines it as a type of agriculture which uses information and technology to make the practice of farming more productive and accurate. Now, this hasn't been, initially this wasn't used by as much farms. For example, according to a different USDA report, in 1998, only 5% of corn and soybean farms in the US were using this, but since then, in 2016, it has skyrocketed to staggering 50%. Now, the biggest and most important technology used in this is variable rate technology, which allows for like farmers choosing the input of crop in a certain area. And additionally, we have GPS soil sampling, which allows you to remotely, similar to remote sensing technology, remotely see what kind of nutrients are in the soil that you're growing on. And another big important one is yield maps, which they put on harvesters. So when a harvester goes to harvest that crop, it'll see how much yield there is. So farmers will be able to know like where the most important place to plant their crop is. Now the pros of it is that much data can be grabbed from a single farm in order to make the necessary decisions and make the best use of it. Additionally, unlike Max's solution, this solution relies more on polyculture. And this has been proven to be more effective, because this really gets rid of the use of pesticides, because you can plant crops that will be resistant to this plant or this bug in a certain spot, but you're not exactly trying to get the most crops out of it, but you're trying to get it as efficiently. So you don't really have to focus on monoculture here. And like what I just said, it's very environmentally friendly, because this majorly reduces the use of pesticides due to that polyculture portion. But however, much of the work in this is that the farmers need to gather the data from their farm and implement it in the decisions they make that can be very time consuming. Additionally, precision agriculture is more of a long-term investment, because once you initially put it in there, maybe after the first harvest you'll see a little bit of growth, but it will keep going up after that, and the more technology that you put in there. Now, Richard E. Plant, who has an agricultural engineering degree from the University of California, defines agriculture as precision agriculture is based on information management, and it is made possible by the confluence of new technological developments. And what this means is this will keep indefinitely becoming more and more innovative and efficient as our technology does. Additionally, there's much evidence that this is working, because so many U.S. farms are using it. However, in order to use this equipment and technology, farmers will need to be able to know how to use them, which requires much more skill. So maybe you have to hire new farmers or put farmers through more classes. Additionally, it is somewhat hard to transport these technologies in the poor third world countries that do make up a lot of our world's farming. Now, one specific example of this is on Schmidt Farm in Australia, and it was a case study done by the Grains Research and Development Corporation in Australia, and they implemented various types of technology there, and they found that after one harvest, and they based a model off of it, that if in a year where they're not expecting much yield, they will still see increases of around 5%, But in years where they're expecting much more yield, they'll see increases of around 10 to 15%. So even if you're not expecting your farm to do very good, it will still improve upon this. Now we come to the conclusion that precision agriculture is the best solution for one main reason, because it has been shown to be used in multiple places successfully. Farms in many countries have been using this, not just farms in India like the Evergreen Revolution. Additionally, it'll keep continuing to grow along with our technology, making it better and better.
Good. Okay, guys, I got a couple of questions for you. And let's see, we'll just start on the left with Andrew. So how did the group decide to include Max's perspective, lens, or conclusions into the overall presentation?
Okay, Max had the lens of economic. So we didn't use this for as much of our solutions, but we did use this throughout the whole concept of our slide presentation as something that is sustainable needs to be economically viable. So yeah, we had to put that in big consideration on choosing our solutions.
Okay, good. Max, what was the strongest counter-argument to the final conclusion or solution that you guys selected? And how is it that counter-argument isn't sufficient to prevent you from advocating for it?
Well, so our counter-argument is that it's the solution that we decided to incorporate into our conclusion, precision agriculture, was pretty difficult to decide whether or not we want to have the polycultural precision agriculture that we wanted to choose for that, because it has seen more success than the Evergreen Revolution. And so I feel like that the counter argument against that is that the Evergreen Revolution could have more potential than the precision agriculture in the future, just because of the fact that it's using a lot less resources and it can be implemented in many third world countries. But I think that would just be the strongest counter argument that I could come up with to choose that.
Good. And then finally, Brian, having finished the project, what would you consider to be sort of a hole in your research that if you had more time, that you would go back and kind of investigate because it would make your presentation better? Can you identify any specific area that probably needs more research?
Yeah, I think the biggest area in which we need the most research is mostly having to do with Max's lens, which is the economical side of it. Because when we talk about our presentation, we don't really think about we don't talk about the prices. For example, precision agriculture would be way more complicated and more expensive than the Evergreen Revolution, because it just takes more training for the farmers and it takes more costs for the different crops.
Okay. Good. Thanks, guys.